Mhm. Good with that. All right, great. Welcome, everyone. It is April the 20th, 2020, just after 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is the Monday night Conscious Community class with me, Matthew Brownstein. We've been doing these classes, excuse me, on and off for about, since 2012, and picked them up again when the whole COVID thing started, so more or less recently started again. The past two classes have been posted on YouTube. The first one is the Bodhisattva Vow in Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, based on compassionate service to all beings. And then last week's class related to my book, Peace Under All Circumstances. And that book is now an audiobook for free on YouTube as well. So tonight's topic is opening the heart and clearing emotional blocks, with the subtitle, or you could say, the title is Yogic Philosophy and Psychology, and the subtitle, Opening the Heart, Clearing Emotional Blocks. Let me do a disclaimer. When I use the word psychology, we're not talking about psychotherapy. We're not talking about clinical psychology. We're just talking about a way of using the mind that helps, and more than just the mind, but a way of working with your energy, with your heart, with your being, a way that brings a very deep sense of peace and freedom that we usually don't hear discussed in Western teachings. So I'm not going to use the word psychology tonight because I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, you know, we're it's hypnotherapy school, that we're getting into a place we really technically shouldn't be going. Yet, when you think back about the ancient yogis, and we'll talk about, you know, who are these people, why we're using that term yogic, we're talking traditions that are literally thousands of years old that have been extremely well refined. But it's not really just the systems that are so interesting. It's the results that are gotten through what you see in the people who have been through these traditions. And for me, this goes back, you know, I'll tell you a little bit about me and why we're talking about this tonight. In 1992, I had a very profound spiritual experience. And I went from a life where everything was normal, and it was the way I think most human beings experience life, to an instant where everything was pure light. It wasn't drug-induced or anything like that. It was literally, for me, just an experience of reality, because I was just conscious, I was present, I was aware, I was right there. The only word that I really could give to it was God, and it wasn't really a religious word, it was just, wow, whatever they're saying God is, this must be that. Everything that seemed dualistic at that time, that there were multiple objects, right? You have like a bed and a wall, another wall, and a window, and the tree outside the window. All of that had become one being. And that one being was pure light, it was pure love. It seemed like it would always be there, so I would say most likely eternal, but at least right there, it wasn't going away. And I knew myself to be intimately one with it, the way a drop is one with the ocean, to the point where you wouldn't even call it drop. So I'm in college at that, long story short, about that experience. I'm in college at the time, and it was so important to me. I started asking family and friends, you know, what is this? What happened? And nobody knew, because nobody had had the experience. So I started a lot of research. Eventually, I chose a major in college, which was philosophy. And, you know, I looked into, of course, psychology in different ways. Really, my whole life was dedicated to how do you tap back into that experience. And again, I couldn't find any answers from the Western teachings, especially in the field of psychology, which, you know, is wonderful in many ways, of course. But the model wasn't based on enlightenment or oneness with the divine. So when I started talking about this idea of the yogic teachings, there are saints and sages of all the world's religions who have achieved states that basically anyone who goes into psychotherapy are working to achieve. And I was like, well, why not just focus on that? So what happened after studying philosophy for a while, I realized that was really, for me, overly intellectual, because no matter how much they debated and discussed theories of the existence of God or the absolute or whatever they want to call that, they weren't experiencing it. Right? A lot of good things came out of that, moral philosophies, ethics, but it wasn't making me drunk on light and love again, you know, and that's all I wanted. So as I started studying religion, the superficial religions, again, can be very valuable. You know, the superficial, when superficial, the term is exoteric, just the way people live life with a religion, right? Judeo-Christian, Islamic tradition, and Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, so, you know, just some of the major world religions. Some of them go a bit deeper as far as working to give you direct experience, but most religions aren't as concerned about that. So what I found in world religion was something called mysticism. And I don't think everybody quite knows what that term means. I would define it tonight to get us started as if you use theistic terms, you would say it's the soul's longing to experience its source. Or I'm not trying not to use the word God too much because it's not a religious class. But again, we're going to go into yogic philosophy and, what were these people saying way back when? So in mysticism, what you find are these saints who are drunk on God. They're in that state of love and light and peace and bliss and oneness. And it seems to maintain better health for them. It seems to, for a lot of them, not all of them for sure, but to manifest abundance in their life and, beautiful relationships. All the great world religions and spiritual teachings pretty much come out of these beings. So they became my role models for any system I want to work with. It's going to need to lead me to that. And any career that I'm in is going to need to lead me, not just me, and anyone else I want to work with to that. So my story, which some of you may know a bit about, after I graduated with that degree, I was like, well, what do you do with that? I could go into academia, teach in the university settings, but how am I going to enlighten people to who they truly are and free them from the blocks to who they really are? Because we'll talk about blockages a lot tonight. I couldn't do that in academia. So I went to Chinese medical school. I spent 2 different schools, about 2 years total, learning all about Oriental medicine. And while it's wonderful, and there's a concept of energy blocks in that tradition. You have this idea of qi, which we'll talk about tonight using other words, right, or life force energy. And then when blockages arise in that flow, then ill health can develop. And not just physical ill health, but mental ill health. Or the other way around, that mental emotional blocks in Chinese medical model clearly can manifest physically. Right, so at that time, I started studying with psychic medical intuitives. I did my Reiki training and, yoga and Tai Chi and, everything you can get your hands on as far as this stuff goes. And even after 2 years of studying that, I'm like, how am putting in, again, respect to every tradition I mentioned tonight, for me, I was like, how is putting needles into someone's body actually going to do what I want to do? Can I give someone a profound mystical awakening and set them free of all of their personal blocks through that practice? And a lot of the teachings in that practice made me conclude, I'm not quite sure it's going to do that. I've had some powerful acupuncture experiences. I'm like, whoa, that was like really oneness consciousness. But I think that happened for me because I was already learning how to tap into that. I wasn't that far removed from that through whatever reasons, but it was clearly having those experiences. So that first experience in 92 wasn't the only one that I had, of course. And after about a year of getting into these deeper spiritual practices, I felt I could tap into that more and more over and over again. It wasn't this mysterious reality that sometimes I could experience. And now it's really never not there. All right, there's certainly, personally speaking for a moment, changes in the human system, but a little bit of meditation and rip right back into that space. So that's the beginning of the personal story, which led to hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming and breathwork. So when I started studying all of these traditions, I realized I could take the deep spiritual knowledge that I had gained also through living in spiritual communities, about 5 years total, living in ashrams and monasteries, just again, different spiritual centers where, I actually lived and did those practices. And I just wanted anyone and everyone I possibly could to tap into what I was experiencing through that. For me, hypnotherapy doesn't only doesn't only focus on that, right? We have all of our non-therapeutic uses of hypnosis, of course, like the smoking and the weight loss, helping people to sleep better, raising self-esteem, prosperity consciousness. There's great non-therapeutic uses. And then the therapeutic uses, okay, let's see a little thing on my screen. I think we're okay. The therapeutic uses, we deal with medical hypnotherapy, dealing with pain management, dental hypnotherapy, hypnosis for childbirthing, right? We have these clinical medical applications. And then, of course, is all the very direct transpersonal applications, which we teach in the school. So in case you guys, some of you might not be familiar, I don't have with Zoom the ability right now anyway to show a PowerPoint. Well, you have the ability, but I don't have a PowerPoint set up to show you today. So it's going to be more talking and verbal, hopefully interactive soon, and certainly some meditations. So few thoughts there. But All right, let's dive into anyway with, so hypnotherapy in our school. So long story short from all that, when I ended up opening Florida's first and still currently only state licensed hypnotherapy school, we turned it into a 500-hour training that goes into a lot of these different teachings. And what I wanted for me and for others was to be able to offer a career and have a career where I was clearing major blocks in the psyche, liberating people from, like, the pain that they carry inside, and then bringing them to these much more beautiful states. So we're doing these classes right now, the Monday night classes, because mostly, COVID-19 sparked me to want to get out and make a difference, because if you know what's going on out there, it's really tragic. And there's a lot of people right now, of course, who are dealing with some very challenging situations, right? Some major physical issues, obviously, major financial issues. I'm sure, for so many people, serious emotional issues. And so we're not talking about, when we get tonight into this idea of yogic philosophy, yogic psychology, we're not talking about like really deep-seated mental health conditions that would need a licensed practitioner in that way. The model that I usually pull from is helping the able to become more able, right? To empower students and hypnotherapists with teachings that help you to set your own heart free. So what I found, we'll start diving more specifically into the topics tonight now, in the yogic philosophy, we'll just keep using the word philosophy here. In the yogic philosophy model, you have two different energies. I'm going to give you Sanskrit words tonight because you just don't really have good words in English for this stuff. But every time I give you a word, I'll explain what I mean. So here's two words that help us to understand a bit of what's going on in this yogic model and how you can get to states of being that in Western teachings you just honestly never really even hear about. The first word is Purush, P-U-R-U-S-H. Sometimes you hear it as Purusha, but a more accurate pronunciation, if you're saying just the word by itself, Purush. Purush actually translated would mean the supreme person. But similar to the word God, that's extremely misleading, because in this model of yogic philosophy, psychology, let's keep saying yogic philosophy, there's really no need, not that there isn't, but there's no need for the personal God idea. It's there actually in yogic practice. You have what's called Ishvar Pranidhan, which is a practice of direct worship or devotion of God and a very personal nature of God. However, tonight we're not really interested in, at least I'm not interested in sounding preachy or religious to overly use the word God. So let's just focus more on this idea. What is Purush, which is actually more of an impersonal, absolute reality. One of the best translations for Purush is consciousness, but consciousness with a capital C. An awareness that's everywhere, beyond time and space, within time and space. Just if you were to sense right now that you're conscious, right, and say, where is your consciousness? Is it actually in your body? Is it above your body? Is it to the left or right of your body? Right? Maybe it's in the space in between you and your computer screen. Right? Maybe it's behind you, in the sense that you, meaning like your body, looking through your eyes. Like, what if that reality is actually you? Right? And that's actually what they're saying in these yogic teachings. So that's Purush. The other word that goes along with this, two P words, is Prakriti. I won't spell all these words. Prakriti is another word similar to what we have in Chinese medicine of Qi, in Japanese Ki with a K, sometimes with a Qi. So Qi, or we have another word in Sanskrit, Prana, so Purush and Prakriti. So you hear the word Prana, you hear the word Shakti. These words relate to power or energy. A way to understand this, if we want to be theistic for a bit, in biblical terms, when the creation occurred, and again, in that model, and God said, let there be light. Purush is God. It's the consciousness, the awareness, the I am presence before the word was spoken, before creation started. When that light explodes, however you want to visualize that, like Big Bang kind of explosion, the light explodes out of source. That light is Prakriti. It's very important to get that understanding in yogic philosophy. You have Purush and Prakriti. So macrocosmically speaking, meaning like universal level, bigger than what any of us can conceive of, you have Purush, the infinite source, manifesting the whole universe, or you could say multiverses, but all that is comes out of that one source. And all that is essentially made of prakriti. Now, to not make it sound dualistic, because it's not, consciousness is source in this model, and Purush is consciousness, and then Prakriti is the energy that emanates out. But you could say that Prakriti is conscious energy. You can debate that, but I would say that everything has to be conscious in this model because there's nothing else, right? Like if you said, okay, there was this being in the beginning of all that is, which is actively doing what it's doing right now, and that being is consciousness. It's not that it had something else to pull from, right? It wasn't that there was a bunch of clay over to the right. It was like, all right, here I am. I want to know myself, I want to experience myself. I want to manifest or extend myself. And so however that happens, but I believe it does, and from my own mystical experiences, it does and it is. There's this energy emanating out into the whole world that we see. So macrocosmically, just imagine that one source manifests the whole, at least we'll say the physical plane right now, but it's much more complex than just physical matter. So everything you see is basically prakriti, or you could just call it conscious energy. Now, microcosmically speaking in this model, you have you. So the microcosm is the human being. Right? So if there's an infinite ocean, then you're a drop of that ocean. And the word you might use for that is soul. But it's kind of misleading because it implies that that soul is somehow separate from that, or like you dropped down here. Like there was an up there and there is an up there, right? There's obviously up and down everywhere. But right here now, you exist, you are conscious. And this makes it not quite as philosophical or and certainly not dogmatic. It's very practical, like here you are. And it'll lead tonight into the meditations and the understanding of how we can work with this in hypnotherapy and meditation to set others free, to set ourselves free. But you'll see, based on like the intensity of what's happening on the planet right now, these teachings are extremely practical. So, I'm not going to get too into the COVID thing. These teachings would apply to any time in history. It's not like, wow, things are really bad right now. We better learn how to, to utilize this. So I've been teaching this stuff, learning about and teaching it for almost 25 plus years now. So it's always relevant. All right, so you're Purush, you're the drop of that ocean. You're the same substance. You could say you're not the same quantity, but you're the same quality, right? So if you said, okay, are you God? Like nobody wants to necessarily claim that, but you could say I'm the part of that that's happening as me. I'm the drop of the ocean happening as me, but the drop again isn't separate from the source. The great poet Saint Kabir, he said, I laugh when I hear that the fish in the water is thirsty, or the fish in the ocean is thirsty. You are part of that right now. Again, you couldn't be anything else. It's not like there's two other substances in this model. There's just that. So you're the consciousness. And then the question would be, where are you? Now, time and space doesn't really matter very much with that question, yet get a sense right now, to make this very practical, where do you sense yourself to be? Are you just in your toes? Are you down your fingertips? Right? Or are you kind of like here? You're just aware that you're aware, and usually more centered up in the head region. In this model, it's perfectly fine to acknowledge. Now, those of you who are familiar with the chakra system, I wish I had graphics tonight. You can Google this if you don't know. So another fancy but well-known Eastern term is chakra, C-H-A-K-R-A. Chakras are wheels or vortices of energy in the energy body of the human being. And the model here, if you talk about the microcosm or the human, we're saying that the consciousness, and that relates to the seventh chakra, the crown of the head, starts descending down in what's called an order of manifestation. It manifests at infinite light, which brings about the idea of duality, or yin and yang, masculine, feminine. That comes down to about the third eye region, which is known as the sixth chakra. And the reason, so if we said 7, 6, it's like we're counting from, usually from the bottom up. With this model, if we're talking about manifestation into form, we're talking about from the top and down. And again, this will become very practical very soon. So we go down again, moving through the chakra system down to the throat, the fifth level. Here you're talking about the level of, you might say, vibratory mind. It's overly simplified, but you have pure consciousness, you have the light that emanates from that, and then you have the vibration known as mind. Again, very simple, oversimplified model here. So there's a you who observes a conscious mind, and then moving down more towards the heart, we have the fourth chakra, which is the name of our corporation, Anahat Education Group. The heart deals with, you could say, just the energy of love, but now the energy that we're talking about, this consciousness, this light, even mind itself in its purest form, but maybe you use a capital M for that mind. But in the pure sense, the Saint Baba Muktananda, he said, the purified mind is like unto God, right? That your mind, when it's very clear and pure, which is the whole aim of tonight's teaching and practice, is your mind is not different from divine mind. When that is fully expressing itself, the energy of that being is love, right? So if you're open to all of that, just in the level we're talking about right now, speaking very simply, your inner being is love. It is light. It is pure peace. And it's pure joy. And nothing has to be done to make that a reality. So that, to me, just that alone right there, and again, it's highly oversimplified, and I can only do it right now with just using my words. So I hope you're following and enjoying what we're talking about. If you could feel just that, like, wouldn't that be awesome? Now, with all due respect to every Western tradition, when I was in college looking for, all right, I really want to dedicate my life to something awesome. Freudian psychology, which is now what most modern psychotherapists practice anyway. But back in like 1990, 92, when I was really starting to figure out, learn about all this stuff, I just wasn't impressed with what they could teach me in college about the mind, because I wanted a teaching that brought me to infinite universal light and love, because the great saints and sages were showing that they were just immersed in that, blissed out on that. They would go into seclusion, which is also a relevant teaching during COVID when we're all in a stay-at-home order. If you can find pure light and joy inside of your being just by sitting on a meditation cushion, isn't that so valuable? So just that alone made me say, I want in, right? I want to know about these teachings. I want to know about these practices. And again, it's not easy to learn about this stuff. It's easier now because of the internet and YouTube, but obviously you can go really astray with those kind of teachings. You never really know who's saying what. And I wouldn't say you have to trust me. I just hope you'll take something from this that helps you and helps others. Let's keep talking about moving down the chakra system. As energy comes in, the yogic teachings say it comes in through the region of the medulla oblongata, but that's really, it sounds fancy, but I think it's misleading in the sense that it only comes in through that aspect of your brain. You can just imagine your body's like a tube, because it is, right? It comes in, food comes in one end, goes out the other. You're just basically a tube. And your chakra system is like a tube. The energy comes in through the top, down through the third eye region, through the throat, but down through the whole column, down through the heart. And as it's coming down, it's essentially manifesting you, right? Manifesting the whole of your being, all the way down to the human. It goes down through the solar plexus, third chakra, and there you're talking about personal powers, like the energies coming into the form of the human. That'll deal with your level of confidence, high confidence, high self-esteem, feeling secure within yourself, right? If all of that power and knowledge and wisdom is pouring into you, you should feel pretty good about who you are. If we're going to use the word God, I could use it in a relevant or, I'll just say relevant way here to say, if you know yourself to be a child of that, a spark of that, a drop of that, could there be any greater self-esteem, right? In the different mental health psychotherapies, hypnotherapy, and again, not to put them in the exact category for legal liability reasons mostly, but anything that's really dedicated to relieving human suffering by focusing on the heart and the mind, all those, clearing out who we are. What could be greater self-esteem than I am pure light, I am pure love, I am pure peace, I am pure joy, I am one with my source, I am always one with that which manifests me or that which created me. Like everything you'd ever want to feel is implied in a fully open third chakra, everything about high self-esteem. So if you're filled with love, your heart is open, you're not filled with hurt, pain, fear, guilt, shame, jealousy, all that stuff. So what we're talking about for this Yogic Philosophy and Psychology model, or opening the heart, clearing emotional blocks, is a model that comes from wholeness. And again, it's the saints and sages that are the role models here. Right? You see, like, imagine Buddha sitting under the Bo tree. Like, what's happening inside of him when he well, let's just say, let's call it for what it is. When he said, like, he was enlightened, he became the Buddha, which means the awakened one. He's not the only one, right? But that very special moment in human history where one person sat under a tree, short story, right? Short version of that story, and he experienced one of the best terms, and it's very hard to intellectually understand it. In Buddhism, you'll hear it's a Sanskrit word called shunya. Shunya refers to empty, or empty of a separate self. In that moment, and it's a moment, but at the same time, it's a practice and a process, which we're talking about tonight to get there. Buddha experienced and he was practicing everything. So Buddha lived in India. He practiced the yogic teachings that we're going to be talking about tonight. Not all of them, of course. We're going to touch upon these models. And this is the stuff that Buddha was practicing. He refined it in his own way, because Buddha was basically a Hindu or yogic reformer. And then Buddhist philosophy and psychology arose out of that. So again, if you study these, again, I'm going to use the words. I'm not saying we practice psychotherapy or psychology, but if you study, because you can study and talk about anything. If you study yogic philosophy, psychology, Buddhist philosophy, psychology, you get models of the mind and the energy body, the whole of who we are. That's honestly, to me, so much more evolved than what we tend to see in the West. There's a place for what we see in the West, because some people are just not ready for this kind of stuff. Like I said, we're helping, usually in the school here, to help the able to become more able. Right? So somebody who really needs significant psychiatric intervention, probably not ready for the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. So every practitioner has their place, but those of you who really want to tap into this stuff, like to say, what would it be like to feel like Buddha felt under the Bo tree? Like that kind of peace that he must have felt, the feeling of oneness with all that is, the absolute certainty that there was nothing else to accomplish. Not that evolution and growth doesn't keep happening through such a being. After Buddha was enlightened, he just kept teaching for a good, 40 plus years or something. Monasteries evolved, teachings evolved now, this huge religion called Buddhism. But think about, and same with Christianity, we can talk about for just a sec, because again, to me, it's these saints and sages, or really world religious leaders in a lot of ways, who become the role models. One man sat meditation under the tree, Siddhartha Gautama, became the Buddha. And now we've had since then, I don't know, there's not a billion Buddhists on the planet right now, but over human history, there's probably been a good billion plus. A billion people, try to imagine how many a billion is. A billion people follow this one person's teachings. Same with Christianity. One person who's only 33 years old did something, and didn't even do that much, really. So I'm talking about Jesus, right? We don't even know what happened from basically 0 to 30. And then he's there for about 3 years doing his ministry. Gave a few teachings. We don't have a whole lot, in the records. And some of those records are questionable, of course. But really, it's most likely, he existed. He did something. There's obviously the main thing he did, which is the dying on the cross resurrection thing. That's a matter of faith. But my point is, one person who you say was most likely highly enlightened changed the entire world. Now we have well over a billion, I think it's close to 2 billion Christians on the planet, and that's just now. So now we're talking billions and billions of people had their lives transformed in some way because of one person who basically did what we're talking about doing tonight. And you can go, so there's the big ones, right? Buddha and Christ, but there are so many saints and sages who achieved these, I'm going to say these same states. I know some Christians might have a problem with that, saying, people achieve what Christ did. But looking at that from a yogic philosophy model, you just have beings who are completely self-realized, who are completely God-realized. It's not only two, right? There are a lot of people who have achieved what's called cosmic consciousness. There's a book you can read by Richard Maurice. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It's B-U-C-K-E, Richard Maurice book or book. It's called Cosmic Consciousness. And he talks about 3 different levels of, you might say, evolution. First, you have that which is conscious, right? So animals are conscious. We'll keep this simple. Like animals are conscious. Then you have self-conscious, and that's the human being. But then you have, we're all self-conscious. It's not a negative word. It's just you're aware that you're aware. It's like, oh, here I am. Where a dog who's conscious isn't necessarily as self-aware as you are, right? So the evolution through all the I would say plants too, but in this model, actually, everything is consciousness, right? That's how we started. Everything that's energy is also conscious, and therefore everything is consciousness in this model. right? And that's not really hard to grasp, and most of you, I'm sure, are very comfortable with that model already. So plants, animals, conscious. Humans, self-conscious. And at the self-conscious point, we're like, who am I? What's going on here? Why am I here? What? There's got to be something more. Then there's the next stage of evolution that he talks about called cosmic consciousness. And to me, and he actually made a list of a lot of the beings who have achieved that. It's a very limited list, but a lot of the saints and sages he wrote about in there say, these are the ones who in the religious literature clearly seem to have made it there. To me, those are the role models for a good philosophy psychology. Because if not, all you're really doing, and you find this with Western medicine, the allopathic tradition is more Western. That means against the pathogen, right? We're all trying to fight coronavirus. I get it, of course. And then there's the model of homeopathic medicine, which is like the pathogen. I won't go too into that. But when you look at, and not to say homeopathic is Eastern, but when you look at Eastern and Western thought, and especially from the traditional Chinese medical or Ayurvedic, the medicine of India, what you find in the Eastern line of thinking is a model that starts from wholeness and then works to move people back to wholeness, instead of a model that fights disease. So again, Western medicine, when you go to your doctor, largely, and again, it's good, like thank God for it, allopathic is fighting the disease. That's great. Now, if the psychological models are looking at it that way, right? We have these imbalances, we have these diagnoses that we see in people, and we've got to kind of fix those diagnoses. But if it doesn't start from the model of wholeness, right? Of, okay, you are love, you are peace. This is what the saints and sages talk about. So they're either right or wrong, right? They're either lying or they're just telling the truth. Even if they're not lying, certainly, but even if they're mistaken, I'd rather be blissfully ignorant the way they were, right? To be able to close your eyes and just feel pure peace and joy for no reason at all is worth it. There are no mental health conditions in that. There's no problem when you're in that state. I'm going to finish the chakra system model, and then we're going to talk about very practical things in all of this. But again, I hope this is helpful for everybody to hear. We're related to personal growth, techniques, things you can do, and then we're related to hypnotherapy, how you can understand this stuff with your clients. So energy is coming down into the system. Again, this energy is everything you'd ever want to feel. It's the one reality of all it is. You could say it's inherently good. It's beautiful to tap into. All of the saints and sages we're talking about experience the same thing. And that's why their teachings are worth looking at. So you got somebody meditating in a monastery in Spain, like St. John of the Cross, his beautiful works, Dark Night of the Soul, other works, but that's his main one. So like you look at what he's saying about the perfect union of divine love, and then you study somebody like Ramana Maharshi or these great saints in India, and they're saying the same thing, right? It's all over the whole world. And anyone who does the experiment experiences this. Speaking of the experiment, when you look at yogic practice, which is not, by the way, just the body postures, I don't know if we have time tonight to talk about every yogic system, because there are a bunch. Yet, most people know when you say yoga, about the stretching and the breathing. And you get stronger, more flexible. It's great stuff, right? I do it every day personally. But yoga is much more than just stretching and breathing. So when you see people who are doing these practices, who are achieving the same states, it's worth looking into. So that's the experiment. Do certain practices, do certain things with your energy, you will experience what the great saints and sages experience. Therefore, it's actually a scientific method, right? The hypothesis is you can be filled with peace and light and love with really no mental emotional issues. A lot of the saints are different. They're not, you can't categorize them. Like you study the lives of these beings, like study Sri Paramahansa Ramakrishna. He was a priest at the Calcutta temple in Dakshineshwar. It's a temple in India on the Ganges River. He spent years there just blissing out on divine love and totally dysfunctional as far as, his ability to like hold a job or something. He didn't have to, he was a priest at a temple and they just gave him food. But you study his life, and I'll talk about him a little bit more once we fully establish, I'll be sure to talk about him more, the chakra system model and what that can be like inside of a human being. And he's just a great example of that. So again, his name is Ramakrishna, for those of you who don't know. But anyway, these beings are all experiencing the same thing. The hypothesis is you and your clients can too. right? Even during all this COVID-19 stuff, because that light and love must be inside of you. And that's what every one of these traditions tell us. So that's the hypothesis. That's inside of you. Then you have to, in scientific method, perform an experiment, right? And then you get a result, right? So you say, all right, I'm going to do these practices. I'm going to study this stuff. I'm going to do these techniques. I'll use this stuff with my clients. And let's start to collect data. And then you start realizing, wow, people are actually experiencing all this, right? You can tap into, again, I keep saying peace, bliss, light, love, but that's what's inside of you. And then it has to be duplicable, right? So if it's truly scientific, you have to say, all right, can other people do the experiment and get the same result? Once it is, it really becomes scientific fact. So to me, the yogic path, and yogic really, I haven't really defined that tonight. Let's just even say the mystical path, referring to every deep spiritual religious tradition that gives us direct ways to tap into what every human being wants to tap into, right? That's essentially what yoga is. It's a path. It's only one path. It's not the only path, right? And again, it's not just the body stretching that helps us to find that which we all want to feel inside. Okay, so again, there's scientific method here, and I do believe it's worthy of using. Not that we're claiming to be psychotherapists here, because we're not, unless you are. I'm not. Yet I can say, I'm fully allowed, and you are, of course, to study these teachings, realize they were dealing with a very deep psychology that was very practical, that set countless numbers of beings free in greater ways than I've ever seen in Western models. All right, we're finishing with the chakra system. The energy comes down and in, basically. So just imagine infinite light pouring down into you, but the chakra system model says your body can handle infinite light. Yeah, it would explode, even beyond exploding. So the chakras are like energy transformers. If you have all this energy coming from a nuclear power plant, you can't plug it into a light bulb. It has to go through transformers which step down the energy so that you only have 120 volts coming out of your outlet instead of whatever the volts are. Just see what's happening on the screen. I think we're good. Actually, just one sec. Oh, one sec. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so chakras, energy vortices, transformers, stepping down energy into the human form. Every step down makes it more human, right? So we come down from consciousness to light, and again, oversimplified version, to mind, to heart, which deals a lot with the emotional level of your being. Third chakra, solar plexus, also simply stated, the emotional level of your being. Second chakra deals with pleasure and sexuality. We won't go too into that tonight. And then first chakra deals with food, shelter, clothing, the most basic human needs, including connection to the tribe, which is obviously important now as we're all stuck at home. So simply stated, energy pours down into the human being. Now, that energy in this model, so the energy, again, I gave you two words in the beginning. Purush is the observing consciousness. Prakriti is the energy that manifests out of that. It comes down into the human, allowing the human to be, to have this experience. Without the Prakriti, without the Shakti or the life force coming into us, you couldn't actually have the human experience. But it needs to loop back up into source. And this is why the chakras are numbered from the bottom up, because the energy goes back up. Now, you know this from your own experience because you feel it. When emotion comes up, you feel it come up. When anger comes up, it boils up inside of you. When fear comes up, you feel it come up. There is a you observing that. So regardless of everything I've said so far, yogic psychology or yogic philosophy simply says there's a you observing a human, and the human has emotion that rises up. So now what is this? And this is really what we're talking about. We have in the mental health type fields, right? We're very concerned with mind and emotions. The yogic model acknowledged this and what's going on in this system, again, for thousands of years. When the energy starts coming up through this system, you can imagine, like if you can imagine down at your tailbone, like, all right, I got to get back up to the crown of the head. I got to move up through these energy vortices. But what they talk about are what are called blockages, where it doesn't move through smoothly. So, and that's really what it comes down to. So the simple term here, using just a basic English word, there are blockages in the energy flow. You hear about, and you guys know this, you hear about this in Chinese medicine and Reiki and Tai Chi, all these systems acknowledge this, the energy has to flow smooth through the system. Even, let's do a little hypnosis. Franz Anton Mesmer, kind of the founder of the whole, mesmeric and then hypnotic movement, he was taking magnets, waving them over people's bodies, trying to relieve the blockages in the again, oversimplified discussion here, animal magnetic flow. Eventually he learned it wasn't his, the magnets at all, it was his own hands. He could rub his hands over people and move the energy and clear the blocks. And then eventually they found out it's not actually the hands at all. It's actually just the power of the mind, right? So that's what modern professional hypnotherapy says. 1854, Dr. James Braid, who gave us the term, or kind of coined the term for the field, hypnosis, comes from the Greek god of sleep, is that word. So the word is a lot older than 1854. But what Dr. James Braid was acknowledging, trying to separate it from mesmerism, is to say, you can heal people the way Mesmer was healing people. You could alleviate pain. You could do all sorts of things, but you don't need, and not that there isn't such a thing. In our model, obviously there is, or, these models I'm talking about tonight, there is this energy. But what's so relevant to the discussion is Dr. Braid realized you can make all the shifts that Mesmer was doing, including the altered states, just through the power of suggestion, just through the power of mind. And that was pretty well proven, and it's acceptable, very well accepted to this day. I just believe that what a lot of modern hypnotherapy doesn't acknowledge is that there is this energy, right? I mean, you can, again, I do believe exactly what Dr. Braid and others were realizing at the time. Just the power of the mind can move this energy, because it is your mind that does direct this energy. So we'll talk about that a bit more. So imagine there's this life force that wants to come back up through your system, right? If you ever just fallen in love, you're like, oh, your heart opens and all this love pours through your being. Where did that come from? It's not just biochemical. I mean, sure, biochemicals release when your inner being connects with someone else. So you might say when you fall in love with someone, your heart chakra, or more than just your heart chakra, connects with that person. Everything opens, the energy just flows, and go hug your child. You put your child up to your heart, you're like, oh, all this love pours between your hearts. That's that energy, right? And everybody knows this stuff, even though we might use different words. We all know what it's like when we're feeling love. It moves through us, right? When joy moves through us, when passion moves through us, that's there. Now, this is so important, again, for very challenging times like we're going through now, because of what most human beings do with their energy body, what they do with the energy that moves through them. So consider that we're talking about Shakti, or prana, or Prakriti, 3 Sanskrit words for life force and energy. Emotion, you might say, is energy in motion. Energy wants to come up through your chakra system, and it has to filter through what's in the chakras. And you might consider what's in the chakras, but especially 3rd, 4th, your solar plexus, your heart, that whole region is very much the subconscious mind. It's, again, highly oversimplified discussion here, yet that's kind of what we need to do. So conscious mind, not conscious, there's consciousness, the observer. Then there's conscious mind, you're aware of your conscious mind. And then there's the emotional being. And then, of course, there's a physical being. In this model, the physical being is absolutely affected by imbalances, or you could say blockages, in the mental emotional bodies. But tonight we're not going to talk about healing the physical body with this, although it's a highly relevant discussion. Maybe we'll do in future classes. Here we're just talking about how to heal the mental emotional body to open up to the real glory. You don't hear that in Western psychology. You don't hear your psychotherapist say, let me open you to the glory of the divine light within you. Right? But what if that were the model? And that's why I'm so passionate about hypnotherapy, because it lets me, this path, hypnotherapy, lets me make this the model. It doesn't have to be, right? Because we're pulling from lots of different traditions, obviously. But why not, again, let the role model be someone, again, I'm talking like great saints and sages, let the role models be people who achieved what every single patient and client, and I say patient meaning those who go to doctors and psychotherapists and whatnot, we have clients in hypnotherapy. Why wouldn't every patient and client want to experience that? At least it's definitely biblical, maybe it's New Testament, the peace that surpasseth all understanding. Isn't that why people go in for psychotherapy, really? They might ask for other things, but we've talked about this in the past class. If you kept saying, why do you want that? Why do you want that? Eventually you say, I just want peace. But really, they want the peace that surpasseth all understanding, or a love that never dies, or a joy that's there, whether you leave your house or not. Right? So, I'm a yogi, I'm a meditator, I've done this stuff for a while now. I can just sit on my meditation cushion. Like, I love quarantine. I mean, I'm sorry, everything's going on out there. It's tragic. But you put a yogi in solitary confinement, they're going to bliss out all day long. I'm like experiencing so much bliss meditating this much now that we're locked in our homes. So that's part of why I wanted to reach out again through these classes is it doesn't have to be so miserable. However, there's a lot of misery. And the teachings tell us, how do we deal with misery? How do we transform misery? So I'm not talking at all about we create our own reality here tonight. We're just talking more about an opportunity. Right? There's a lot of really rough things happening on the planet. There always have been. We're just right now at a very difficult time. And it's a chance to clear emotional blocks in our hearts. So if you're feeling scared during COVID, understandable. If you're sad because you see what's happening in the news, well, you should be, or something's wrong with you. Right? If you're not feeling sad, like really, that's not you're blocked. It's very sad what's happening out there. And it can be very scary. And sure, you're justified being angry at, COVID or whatever, but or the way people are handling things, whatever. So, it's understandable. You're frustrated, you're angry. There's people right now who are, there's more domestic violence and murder right now because of people don't know what to do with their emotions. If they just knew these teachings that we're going to get into, it'd be a very different response to what's going on. I'm not saying it would heal everything, but I kind of personally believe it would. Yeah, anyway, that's a personal belief. So mostly I want to acknowledge it's an opportunity. You heard the New York Governor Cuomo, he was talking about one point, we need to wake up from this, learn from this, grow from this, let this be an opportunity, make the world a better place because of what's happening now. These teachings have been here for thousands of years to help us to do that. So here's what's happening. During your life experience, and yogic philosophy actually acknowledges multiple lives, but it doesn't matter what we believe here, talking about in regards to that, but you as spirit or soul have been doing this for a very long time. This isn't your first trip, right? The first time you've had a human experience. Now, let's talk about that for a moment to help to build the idea of what's happening. But again, it doesn't have to be past lives to understand this. You as spirit come down and have a human experience, right? You're doing it right now. And things happen to you. Right? You didn't choose every single thing that happens to you. There's a lot of stuff happening that's obviously not, something you dreamed up or made up before you incarnated. So stuff happens to you. And the stuff can be painful because it is, right? There's pain on this planet. You experience hurt, you experience pain, you experience sadness. The hurt, pain, sadness, and by the way, those experiences that we have that hurt, those become memories. So you have, because you're conscious, you have a storehouse, and there's very advanced terminology for this in Sanskrit, but you have a storehouse of where you store your memories. And just consider that's very subconscious, very much there, and again, highly oversimplified here, but third, fourth chakra region, solar plexus, heart. You'll know this because you'll feel these blocks we're going to talk about. Right, so you have an experience, you as soul come down here, you're having a child body now experience, right? 5, 10 years old, things happen to you. Those become your memories that get stored in your subconscious. Those memories have within them the belief systems. Everybody who goes through a training knows this stuff. The belief systems of that child, right? So you got hurt by somebody and you start concluding, I'm bad. I must have deserved that. I'm undeserving of good things. I must be stupid. I must be unlovable. I must be unloved. Now I'm alone. And then things happen. I'm powerless. I'm helpless. Every one of those beliefs, and there's more in there for any human being, if you probe into the subconscious, we do this in hypnotherapy all the time, you find those type of beliefs: useless, unworthy, undeserving, bad, stupid, unlovable. There's others, but anyway, I've listed some of those. Inside of this storehouse, basically called the subconscious mind, although, let me just say, in the yogic philosophy model, you actually don't have that division of conscious, subconscious. If you pull from the chakra system model, you just have 7 layers. Consciousness, I'm not going to go through all 7, but consciousness, mind, emotional being, and the emotional being basically is where we have our memories, our beliefs, and our emotions. That's the subconscious. Now, the Sanskrit word, which is relevant, and a lot of you might know this word, for the blocks that are in there, and they are blocks to the energy flow, those are called samskaras. You might hear the term samskara or sanskara, but again, I lived in India. The most accurate pronunciation of that word is sanskar, especially when you take the word out of context and just say it by itself, sanskar. A sanskar is a mental impression. Something happens to you, it imprints upon your consciousness. A way to understand a sanskar, have you ever been driving down the highway? You're going, long drive, long drive. You finally get to your hotel at night, you lie down in bed, and all you can see is the road in your head because your consciousness got fixated on something, and now it's an imprint. Our big life, and that'll just go right through your system, which is actually worth acknowledging. You saw the road for a long period of time, it imprints upon your consciousness, but if nothing traumatic happened, it moves through you. That energy, that mental impression, goes through. You'll never even think about it again, right? You're free of that memory, of that energy, and that is a sanskar. It's a mental impression of driving down the road. Now, if you hit a deer, God forbid, if you hit a deer when you're driving down the road, whoa, bigger sanskar, bigger mental impression. Maybe you weren't paying attention, so now you feel guilty. You think you're a bad person. You're angry at yourself. You feel tremendous remorse and shame. That memory with those beliefs and emotions gets stored in what we'll call here the subconscious mind, or you could just say the lower chakras. Lower meaning just lower than your head, right? It's stuffed down. It's not really stuffed in there. That's another topic we'll get into tonight. It's stored in there. It's not resolved. Now, if people knew what to do with traumatic memories, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, then the blocks those things wouldn't remain. Imagine this energy moving up through the chakra system. It just it comes down and in, it comes up and through. But when it's down there, like I said, imagine being at the bottom of the chakra system, like at the tailbone, you look up and you're like, I need to get back up to the top. I come up and down, up and down. That's how the energy just flows up and down through your being. But it tries to go through, but it has to snake through all these blockages. And what comes through is like a trickle of what's really inside of you. Now, how many sanskars do we have? How many memories do you have? How many of those contain negative beliefs and negative emotions? Some people, that's the whole of their existence. The system is so full of that, you really don't have light and love and joy and peace and wisdom and bliss and inspiration and passion flowing through. You have depression, you have anxiety, you have I don't want to feel what's in there. This is a very complicated discussion, so I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So a sanskar is a blockage in the energy flow. And most people, you're talking hundreds, maybe even thousands. There's little ones. So if you say, he can really push my buttons. He just knows how to say and do things that really just irk me. Your buttons are your sanskars. If you can get triggered, you have sanskars. If you're getting triggered all the time, your sanskars are being hit. If COVID-19 is triggering your past childhood stuff, that's what's happening in this model. It's not that you wouldn't feel sad when you see what's happening in the hospitals now. That's a normal emotion. If you're scared because you wonder about your finances, that's a normal emotion. There's nothing wrong with emotion in this model. Emotion comes up through us, and in a clear system, it passes through just like driving down the road at night, the long drive. You get to your hotel room, you saw it for a sec, but then it moved through. Nothing can get stuck, right? The problem of why we have clients and people really need, deep psychotherapy stuff is they didn't let that energy go through. They didn't know how. Nobody taught them what to do with their emotions. So why does this stuff get stuck inside of us? There's one major word, and I talked about, and I said we would get into this, and the very basic way of saying, as I said before, we squish down, I think that's the word I use, squash down our emotions. The more accurate word, perhaps, is the word suppression. And even more advanced word there is repression. Suppression is more, the way I'll define it, is a more conscious act of pushing our emotions away. But it's so important in this yogic model to understand what happens when you suppress your emotions. So let's just talk about it. So energy is coming up, and the energy is now because something happened to you when you're a child, and its emotion comes up. But now remember, I acknowledged this has been going on for a long time. So in hypnotherapy, we're very open to the past life regression model. that you as soul have samskaras from well before this incarnation. But again, you have to believe that. But when you start clearing enough of your present day samskaras, somehow the older ones that are unresolved start coming in too. And we just see that all the time with this work. When you suppress an emotion, the Shakti, the Chi, the life force, the prana that was coming up through the chakra system gets pushed down. Now, what's pushing it down? Your consciousness has willpower. It's actually the power of will. And again, I'm not giving you all the fancy Sanskrit words tonight, but this is like a very elaborate psychotherapy, a psychology, a philosophy, and a way to get free. It's not just establishing the model of illness. It's talking about how to get free of that. The consciousness that you are, Purush, controls all of the energy that it experiences, right? And so for a moment, just stop your mind. Like, don't breathe, don't think, just then breathe. Notice how your breath and your thoughts and your emotions are intimately connected. And that we'll get into that tonight. You as consciousness, when you don't want to feel an emotion, you take your willpower and you push down on that emotion. It's a simplified way of saying it, but you live in there. You just watch and you'll know you're doing that if you're still silly enough to be doing that. Like, you don't want to be suppressing emotions. That's one of the major themes tonight about opening the heart. When something negative happens, and the consciousness being very lost and confused in the human system says, I don't know what to do with this, it does have a very simple innate ability to just push it down. But let's say it's like 40 units of life force energy coming up. It takes 40 units to push it down. But you have that because you as consciousness have power, the willpower, which is technically infinite because you are consciousness, you are the spirit. And the Shakti, the life force coming up, which is now intermingled with this emotion. It's hard to talk about this exactly, but these emotions are made of this Shakti, this energy. If you want to not feel that stuff, which is again very destructive for you, you push it down, and then the samskar collapses in on itself, and that becomes your buttons, your things you can get triggered, your blocks. So imagine here's this beautiful open column of light, but now there's all these little dark spots all throughout it. Those are your buttons, those are your samskaras. Again, that's what gets triggered when you feel bad. So now COVID-19 is causing a lot of emotion, not just because, again, if your heart is open, you feel sad when somebody's dying the way they are in the hospitals and with the medical practitioners you're having to deal with. You feel sad. But now when you push it down because you don't want to feel sad, like, oh, your kids just came in the house, you don't want to be crying because, there's your kids, you want to try to be happy for them. So you push the sadness away. Children do it all the time. We teach children to do it. A lot of you might have been programmed with children to be seen and not heard. Right? Big boys don't cry. When you push all that negative emotion away, it doesn't go away, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It goes into a holding pattern. So even the put on the happy face for the kids can be a way of not letting that energy move through your system, right? You get sad, you take a breath, you let it go. And we'll talk about this letting go idea. The first thing to understand is the suppression model and how it causes samskaras to just get reinforced. So if you have a childhood, let's say traumatic, but any kind of memory that got stuck, right, that you held on to, I'm so sad, I don't want it. It's like the resistance really to what is. I don't want it to be this way. It's not okay. He shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. That shouldn't have happened. I don't want to feel this. It's too painful. I gotta, look happy. So you stuff it inside. So stuffing emotions is suppression. I mentioned the word repression. There is something we find, and we see this in hypnotherapy, during times of very big trauma, there's seems to be a mechanism in place that will not just, like when you suppress, you close down emotion, but you don't really block memory. You can still access the memory of what happened. With repression, the system kind of by default, I guess, I don't know if anybody fully understands, but it happens. Repression is when the memory itself got so pushed down that you can't even remember what happened. What happens with a repressed memory, like childhood sexual abuse, can be, very repressed, intense type of memory. While the person might not remember what happened in childhood, that those samskaras, those blocks are in their subconscious, in their system, you can't not feel the emotions associated with it. You still have the negative beliefs in there, lowering self-esteem. The negative beliefs are causing all these negative emotions. They're motivating negative behaviors and physiological symptoms of imbalance or ill health, and the person doesn't even know why that's in there, right? And that's repression. Either way, the model here is we need to clear all that out. Now, again, I didn't really hear this in a Western psychology model, that you can get free of all your blockages. You can get free of all your samskaras. That's what the great saints talk about. I told you we would go back to Ramakrishna, great saint who lived in India. Rama, and he was alive at a time when there were cameras. You can see, a few pictures of him. And there's one picture where his hand is up, like, it's kind of like that. I believe he's like forming this mudra spontaneously, not as like a practice. And his other hand is down. His eyes are rolled back up in his head, and he's falling backwards in pure bliss. One of his disciples' job was to stand behind the master to catch him when he fell over in bliss. And he would go into that all the time. It would happen like 4 or 5, 10 times a day. So somebody would come by and just like say the name of God, Krishna. And he'd go, oh, the life force energy would pour up through his whole body. His eyes would roll up, and he would literally almost pass out. Like I said, he wasn't the most functional human being, but he was a great example of somebody filled with light and love. That's what the tube, the column of your chakra system is like when there aren't any blocks. When it's filled with blocks, you've got all these buttons that can get pushed. So something happens, it's an association mechanism. It reminds you of what happened in the past, even if it's a repressed memory. Right? So let's say the person who really hurt you as a kid wore a yellow shirt, and one day you're walking down the street and there's a guy with a yellow shirt. Oh, you hate that guy and you hate the color yellow. Those kind of preferences, those ways of distorting the world, those cognitive distortions, if you will. It's not yellow that's bad. It's associated with something that to you was very bad, that is suppressed or repressed inside. But when it gets, here's a very important point, when it gets triggered, and a lot of us are getting triggered right now, right, with what's happening on the planet. So super relevant teachings. When it gets triggered, the emotion flares up. If you're in the habit of pushing it back down, you actually make the sanskar, the blockage, darker. Because when it comes up, it's like literally being liberated at that moment. It's moving through your system. If you're still silly enough to be pushing that stuff down, that extra energy required to push it down makes the blockage thicker, darker. And then next time it gets pushed, it's going to be stronger. So imagine if, let's say, one of your children, they do something that's not so appropriate and you get mad. I'm not talking about how to raise children, just how to clear emotional blocks. So your children trigger you, you get really angry, but you push it away. You don't let them know that you're angry. Next time when they do the same exact thing, the question is, are you more mad or less mad? The truth is you're more mad. It's like, oh God, he did it again. And then, it's this passive aggressive thing. Oh, he did it again. You pushing it away, but the anger comes up. It's not quite the definition of passive aggressive, but you can imagine, right? It's like, I'm passive, I push it away, but then I get aggressive, it comes out again. Every time you suppress your blockages, it makes them stronger and worse. So that's number one of understanding what's happening in our energy system in the yogic model, suppression. And the teaching is, and we'll get into hypnotherapy, and so again, I said personal growth, how do we work through our blocks on our own? And then that's spiritual growth, really, when it comes down to it. But how to do it in hypnotherapy, what's happening in a really solid hypnotherapy practice to clear the samskaras. Okay, so number one is suppression mechanism. And the first teaching for number one is don't suppress. All right, so now what happens when you suppress so you can learn how to not suppress? So again, stop your thoughts for a moment. Don't think, don't feel. Don't do it. All right, and then breathe. Notice how the only way you were able to take that suggestion is you had to stop breathing. When you don't want to feel, you hold your breath. Right? And a lot of people are breathing way up in their chest all the time, right? Take a big breath in and like from up here. Because the breath should go way down to the lower chakras. When you inhale, your diaphragm should expand, your belly expands, the navel pushes out. You exhale, it moves back up through you. The breath is intimately, and yogis absolutely know this, intimately connected to the breath, intimately connected to the energy, to the life force, to your emotions. When you don't want to feel, you stop breathing, and usually you tense your body to a degree. Right? Oh, it's just so painful, I can't stand it. You tense and you hold your breath. there's lots of other ways to suppress, of course. So you can do it through drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. And I'm not saying these things are good, bad, right, wrong, but let's just say you're really sad because of COVID, really angry because of COVID, or whatever, whatever's making you upset. And you're like, oh, just, give me some wine. I'm just going to chug a whole bottle of wine. If you're doing that to numb your emotion, I'm not saying, drinking wine is bad at all, but if you're doing that to numb your emotions, you are suppressing. If you grab a cigarette because you have a negative emotion, suppressing. You smoke some weed because you feel bad, suppressing. Again, not that these things are right and wrong, but not beneficial. To think about, like, whatever buzz you get from a substance is nothing compared to Ramakrishna falling over in ecstasy. Right? Like, which would you, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be that extreme, it probably won't be, but really, isn't like, there's a much more desirable state than what any substance could do. So we are limited on time, but basically that's suppression. Let me see what's in the chat pod. And what I'll do is let me open up to you guys at this point. I've been talking for like an hour. Let's open it up to Q&A a little bit, and then I'll be sure to continue and go into the other things to do with the emotions. Because if you don't hear the rest of this talk, you'll conclude that you should just be venting all your emotions, expressing all your stuff. You're angry, so scream at your kids, because that'll get rid of your blockage. It doesn't actually. So I'll say that before we go to Q&A and read what's in the chat pod. The second thing people tend to do with their emotions is express them or act out on them. I'm angry, but I heard I'm not supposed to suppress it, so I'm going to let it out. Not only is it destructive for the whole world and for like your children, for instance, but it actually never got rid of your blockage. Let's come back to that in a moment. All right, I can't see the full name, but it says in the chat pod, is it possible to talk at another time when you can speak freely without the legal and political censoring? I'd love to hear the uncensored, truly yogic version of this. Sure. So the only hesitation is I'll be honest, I called the topic tonight, Yogic Philosophy and Psychology. I'm not really holding back. I am just being very cautious of using the word psychology because we're not psychotherapists, we're not psychologists. If not, I'm really not holding anything back. And we had one email this morning that came through as part of why I'm sensitized to that. I was like, for our profession, it's just not good to use that word. But these are spiritual talks I do on the Monday nights, and I can say whatever I want. But to associate psychotherapy and hypnotherapy is a mistake in our field. So that's what that is. I'm not holding back. All right, thank you. Any questions or comments so far? And then I'll continue. But fully open to connecting with everybody. And what was your catalyst in your awakening in 92? Well, truth be told, I just finished making love with my girlfriend, but it wasn't sex. It wasn't the first time I had sex. So I honestly don't, well, I don't want to say I don't know, because that's what I dedicated my life to finding out. It was so profound. I said, I've got to experience this again. I have to know what this is. I have to understand it. It took 368 days, I know, because I was keeping a journal, over a year, just over a year, to tap back into it. But during that time, I was studying what it was. The best term I got was from the religion Jainism. It's another religion out of India. Mahavira was a contemporary of the Buddha. They lived around the same time. It's not as popular of a religion, obviously, but they have a term that you find in the traditions of India called Samyak Darshan. Samyak Darshan means the soul's first glimpse of itself. That's one way to translate it. Darshan means vision. So the first vision of who you are. In our school, my book, Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, my book, The Sacred Geometry of Meditation, it talks about stages of spiritual growth. And if you look at it as 10 stages, you can divide it up however you want, but if there's 10 stages, the third is when that happens. So people will get into spiritual teachings for two reasons. One is there's so much pain, right? All the blocks are so intense that they start seeking out help. That's how most people turn to these kind of teachings. The other is somebody who just didn't have a lot of veils to begin with. And so honestly, what happened for me wasn't anything that spectacular. I don't feel like there were a whole lot of veils, a whole lot of samskaras, not claiming anything, but just, that was my subjective experience. I was a happy, perfectly fine guy. And then it was just a beautiful moment. She was just rubbing my heart chakra. And that's all it was. And then just boom, everything became light. So you could say there's just souls who didn't come in with a whole lot of baggage. And then those who still have a whole lot of baggage. Those who don't have a whole lot of baggage honestly wake up pretty easy. Their spiritual path starts usually just, from nothing that spectacular. So I could go on about that, but just to answer your question, that's my understanding. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, let's keep going because we definitely have to cover what to do. Excuse me a second. Okay, thanks. Let's cover what to do with this energy and then again, how it relates to hypnotherapy. So what we're talking about right now is what to do at every moment of your life, not just like, oh, occasionally. It's like never suppress again. If you catch on to that is clogging your system in ways that rob you from what Buddha, Ramakrishna, Christ feel inside. And again, any saint you can think of like, I don't know, so again, anybody that you can imagine, like some of the most beautiful beings, they're not filled with all these blockages. Every time you suppress, you're just adding more muck in there. Okay, so don't suppress and learn like, how you suppress, what that mechanism is. Number two, don't express or act out on your stuff. I'm not saying don't express, I'm expressing right now. The more accurate term would be act out. Your button gets pushed, right? Your kid did something, your anger comes up, right? You saw something on the news and all this emotion comes up. If you do something where that emotion motivates a behavior, you're going to keep the emotion, right? So your kid came in, you said, I'm not going to suppress when he does that anymore. I'm not holding in that anger. Matthew said that that's not healthy. So, by the way, Suppression, my book, the Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, one of the sutras, the little lines of wisdom, says all illness is from something like, I haven't read it in a while, something like all illness comes from suppression. When you keep these dark emotional blocks in the energy body, it inevitably manifests as illness. And again, this is why these teachings are very practical to healing the physical body using the mind. Anyway, that's like I said, another topic. So don't suppress. Now you say, all right, I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to yell at my kid. What happens there is imagine the Shakti, the life force energy, comes up through the heart. It has to go through your filters. There's no other way for it to get through right now. So imagine there's a piece of like stained glass. The light is pure white light. Every samskara is a piece of colored glass. So, all right, your kid just hit the red one. Now, the white light moves through the red stained glass, and now it's red. And you say, oh, I can't deal with that, and you push it down. Now all the red loops and gets thicker. You say, all right, I'm not suppressing, I'll let it out. You vent that through your mouth. Now, obviously, so all that red poison just really hurt your child. Maybe it corrected their behavior properly, but probably not. It's not a very high level of parenting, just be screaming at a kid. All right, so it's not really beneficial anyway for others, for you to puke your own blockages onto other people. I'm talking to just generally, not one person right now. But what happens in your heart with your blocks, that red blockage, that samskara, when you let it out? The way the energy goes, let's just say it this way. I said, when your kid does the same thing again, or you're more mad or less mad. If you suppressed, you're more mad. If you expressed, you're more mad, right? He comes back in, and you're like, he did it again. You said, Johnny, I told you, don't you ever do that again. You're more mad because you let out the emotion. When we so let's say it's anger and it's coming up, it's all red, and you're like, I can't deal with this. I'm going to go kill someone. People, that's what happens. Every person who just did domestic violence and killed their wife during the whole COVID thing, this is exactly what happened. The wife was being herself, but it was pushing the guy's buttons. He couldn't suppress it anymore because he can't get out of the house. There's not enough alcohol, whatever. And that emotion basically was motivating a behavior. What happens, it's like going into a clothing store and trying on different clothing. Like, all right, with this, the mind will say, what can make that feel better? Well, I could drink. Well, there's no more alcohol. Well, I could go. No, I can't leave the house. Well, I could kill her. Oh, okay. It literally, it's a very quick process, and I'm not doing it justice because of the sake of how much time we have in this discussion. But literally, you try on different ideas to make your heart feel better. Well, if I could smoke some weed, maybe that'll feel better. No, I can't get that right now. Okay, well, I can have some alcohol. I can't get that. Well, we could just take a bath, and you try to figure out ways to make that feel better. And if I could yell at my kid and make him stop, maybe it'll feel better. The point is, every time you let that stuff motivate behavior or vent, it only reinforces the block. It never gets rid of it. I could go on and on about why, but just trust me, it's true. So number one, don't act out on your stuff. Number two, Don't let your stuff run your life. If you're letting your emotions run your life, you're not clearing your emotional blocks, and you have an inner child running your life. The inner child, on average, we see this in hypnotic regressions, is about 5 years old, on average. I'm not saying it is, but on average, every regression, the child's about 5. And the child is your emotional self. If you let your emotions run your life, I'm sad, I will do something. I'm angry, I will do something. I'm scared, I won't do that. Yeah, I'm scared to go there, I won't go there. If you make emotional decisions, like, the way we're talking about now, then you have a 5-year-old running your life. Everybody is, these people who are killing their wives now because they don't know what to do with their feelings, they're 7-year-olds, right? That little angry boy in there was allowed to act out. That's an extreme version, but it's happening now. So it's, I guess worth mentioning. But every time, we do that as kind of, I'm gonna say normal and relatively healthy people, we're still reinforcing these negative patterns. All right, so then what do you do? How we get to that. So number 1, don't suppress. You have to know what not to do. Number 1, don't suppress. Number 2, don't act out on your stuff. Number 3, what do? You relax your body, you keep breathing, and you feel your feelings, and that's it. Now, if you're I'll say that again, we'll talk about it. If you're a meditator, this actually becomes really easy. It's not easy, it's actually intense, horrible work. But once you realize you don't really have a choice, it's the only work. You want your blockages clear, you want to be free, you don't want them manifesting health problems, you don't want them causing poor night's sleep, you want to be at peace. And whenever you got blockages in there, you're not at peace. When you have blockages in your system, you're in conflict with yourself and you're not at peace. It's a horrible feeling. I honestly don't feel it very much, but recently I had, how long did that last? I'm being honest, it was like 10 minutes where I was like, oh, that's not peace. But, I've done a lot of this work for like 25 years. It's honestly pretty hard to find another block. I've done so much work in clearing it. We'll talk about how hypnotherapy can clear it. I've done tons of that work on myself, with practitioners and whatnot, colleagues. So to feel like, oh, that's not a peace. It was instantly, oh, that's conflict. Oh, that's a samskara. Okay, no problem. This is a habit now for me. All right, just let go, release. What happens when you don't do anything about what you have inside of you? And ideally, you just sit, so just go sit under a tree, get on a meditation cushion, lie down in bed, literally don't do anything. So let's say, you didn't have a great day today and, you watch the news or whatever. Instead of turning on the TV and numbing yourself out in a Netflix series, and finding a substance to make yourself feel better, sit on a cushion, sit on your couch, or lie down in bed and do nothing. And again, stay-at-home orders are really good for this opportunity. I know it's not always practical to do absolutely nothing, but you do the best you can. The point is, you just relax your body and breathe. You keep feeling your feelings. And then we'll talk about another component of this in just a sec, which also comes about through learning how to meditate well. And I'll just give you the term now. You can call it witness consciousness, or the seat of the soul, or the seat of the knower, or the seat of the observer. If you establish that, which relates to this idea of Purusha Prakriti, you're in a much better place. But even if we don't talk about that higher awareness yet, just let the Shakti, the energy that's moving through your body, hit your blockage, because it did, that's what happens, right? And then you feel your feelings. While you're feeling it, it feels really shitty inside, right? Because that's all your stuff coming up. Now in hypnotherapy, and I'm going to talk about that tonight, lots of ways to clear those blocks. But you're sitting at home and now you're upset. There's some form of upset. Upset just means you're not at peace, right? I'm not happy, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm guilty. Something's in there, doesn't feel good. You know it because you live in there, it doesn't feel good in there. And you want it to feel good in there. To get it to feel good in there pretty much all the time, don't suppress that, don't deny it's there. Don't act out on it and let it motivate any behavior. Just sit and breathe and watch it. And now everything inside of you is going to resist this teaching. You're going to find ways to convince yourself that what I'm saying is wrong. No, that's not true. I deserve to get my vengeance. You just did something about it. No, I got to call her and tell her. You just did something about it. What's more important, being right or changing others or making the world better, or getting your heart free, like getting free of samskaras, free of blockages, so you can experience self-realization, enlightenment, true liberation inside of yourself. And again, these are verifiable teachings because every saint and sage who made it to these higher states, they did this kind of work. There's no way when I talk about, like, Ramakrishna falling into bliss, or these other saints, just drunk in divine ecstasy, there's no way they're suppressing anger. It's impossible to have anger buried in your system and to feel bliss. So now the anger's there. What happens if you see like the red stained glass model, the Shakti, the life force hits it and it starts cooking it, and it's there and you're feeling it. If you keep breathing, you don't stop the flow of the energy. If you're just observing and breathing and feeling, just relaxing, don't tense because you block the flow of the energy. Relaxing, breathing, feeling, next thing you know, it takes a while. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You just keep watching, breathing, feeling. Eventually, that samskara will burn away. The beauty of that is it never can come back. It's not that you don't have other samskaras, and I'm not saying you won't feel emotion. I've been saying you will feel emotion, but when somebody who knows these teachings well, when you feel emotion, it just moves through your system. It's like, oh, okay, that doesn't feel very nice. Okay, I'm feeling it, and I'm releasing it. Now it's gone, and I move on with my life. That's what an emotion is. It moves through us. Of course, I feel sad watching the news, but then I shut the TV off and I go and find my happy again. Right? So you don't have to be caught in your stuff. So you relax, breathing, feel into your feelings. That's the first major component. Let's talk briefly about something we teach in our school called breathwork. I'm trained in rebirthing, holotropic breathwork, and integrated breathing. I dedicate a lot of time to understanding it because it's so powerful. When you suppress your emotions, you tense your body and you stop the breathing. Everything gets locked up inside. When you do breath work, I'm not going to teach you how to do that tonight because some people should not be doing that on their own at home, and it's not the traditional yogic pranayama some of you may know. When we do that with somebody who's very blocked, you will often see the hands lock up, the mouth locks up, the whole body just locks up. And what you're doing is you're seeing the energy hit the blockage, and you're seeing that it's like reversing what they did. By putting so much breath, life force energy in that client's body, it pushes up their samskaras. And then they don't have a chance during the breathwork experience to actually bottle it back up again, nor do they have a chance to act out on it. So it gets to, we facilitate the process, which is why we're having this discussion tonight. How does hypnotherapy really clear the samskaras? I knew these teachings from various sources before I learned my first, little bit about learning hypnotherapy. But when I realized, whoa, these kind of modalities can heal samskaras, I didn't see how acupuncture needles or herbs or Reiki could actually clear samskaras. I studied the stuff, I practiced the stuff, it's all beautiful, massage, but how did it clear samskaras? It really, from my experience, didn't. It can improve samskaras. It can make it better a little bit, but there are certain things that just clear the blocks the way the deep yogic teachings teach us to clear the blocks. And so again, when you're doing breath work, there's tons of life force in the system, a lot of Shakti, a lot of Chi. It pushes up whatever block is there. The body usually responds first, then the emotions arise, then the memories arise. Then a good, well-trained hypnotherapist can heal what comes up. But really, even if you didn't have good facilitation, moving that much energy, usually the blockage just clears on its own. It happens faster than it would through normal life. Imagine that your normal life, you are evolving, but it's like you're walking through time and space. If you start doing some more advanced kind of inner practice, or maybe you're running, you start doing things like breath work and the teachings we're talking about tonight, you'll start growing so fast, it's beyond most people's comprehension what it's like inside of your being. When out-of-body experiences start, light is shining in your head, literally when you're meditating, your third eye is opening and you're projecting into other dimensions, other beings are coming and visiting you in the bedroom. Those are real experiences, cosmic conscious experiences. That stuff happens as your chakras are opening and the life force is being liberated. Most human beings have no clue. And again, Western psychology is not based on this foundation of a truly liberated being. But, study a few of the great saints and sages who, you really can understand what's happening inside of them. Like read their autobiographies. Read an autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. So a lot of these teachings come from Yogananda's teachings. Yogananda knew what pure bliss was, and his form of Kriya Yoga definitely uses breath to move energy. And he's actually that whole idea of growing through evolution at far faster paces than you normally would, because you're consciously, voluntarily intensifying the life force in your system. Again, that's the prakriti or the Shakti, the energy, the light. You're intensifying the light within you, and the light burns away the blockages. This is how it works in this model. But you suppress it and stop it, you made it worse, and you lost an opportunity. So again, COVID is an opportunity to feel your emotions and to clear these blockages. Again, when a blockage is cleared, it's like the life force came through, the light came through, it cleared a channel, and unless you're silly enough to suppress something again, that channel is now always open. You will never, like, that's yours now. It's who you are. It's your nature is pure light, and there's nothing blocking it. So why would it ever come back? It doesn't. And if an emotion came through that channel, just goes right there. Oh, they're sad. Okay, see ya. It's okay to have an emotion. That's part of human, but it moves through. Okay, so breath work is an amazing way to clear your blocks, but again, do it with a well-trained practitioner. Don't do it on your own unless you really know what you're doing and you're truly ready. We're going to talk about witness consciousness tonight, but let's talk about hypnotherapy. But I'll look in the chat pod for a moment. Okay, great. Our beloved Danny Fox had to go. Hello, Tim said, do you recommend doing breath work by yourself? Tim, you're a graduate of the school. You've been a student of mine since God knows what, 2000 or something. So yeah, somebody who's been really around the block with this stuff, like Tim, could do it on your own, who's been through our school's training, who knows how to facilitate clearing what's in there, sure. But the average, I'm talking to, this link is public and this recording is going to be public. So no, I think most people should not be doing breath work on their own. If, I showed the technique and people started doing it, it's not a hard technique. What would happen is you'd have all these people having emotional breakdowns, honestly. It's like, this is the model of help the able to become more able. There's other people who help the people who are seriously in need. Thank God, there's that. But what we as hypnotherapists do, because we're not doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists, they help much more severe cases. We help a person who is functional, who is healthy enough, but still has blockages. Somebody who has some, but not so much, who's a functional. It's a key word. There's ways to, we don't do that in hypnotherapy, but in some of the psychotherapy fields, there's ways to measure how functional a person is. And if you're kind of not very functional, you got a lot of stuff in there, you shouldn't be doing breath work on your own. So yeah, if you've been through our school, you definitely can do breath work on your own. If you graduated, you didn't kill yourself or anybody else, sorry, bad joke. Yeah, then you can do that. Okay, thanks, Tim. So, all right, how does hypnotherapy clear the blocks? When you start hypnotherapy training, in our school, we have fundamentals of hypnotism, the first 100 hours. Also on that level, I would say neuro-linguistic programming ties into this. The samskar is now you have positive and negative samskaras too, but I only have 2 hours tonight. So we're just gonna talk about the negative ones, but realize there are positive samskaras, and in the yogic model, they all need to be cleared. So if you have a negative samskar, you can use hypnotic programming, hypnotic suggestion, visualization work, or NLP, and you can shift that into a much more positive perception. Even in A Course in Miracles, we understand there's a negative perception and a shift to positive perception. That's good. We should be doing that. It's beneficial. It's beneficial for the enlightenment process, but it's not enlightenment. If you fill your head with tons of positive samskars, or your whole body is full of, your system is full of positive samskars, you're still blocked. Every samskar blocks your life force energy. Just consider it, the red glass is now not so red. Now it's like a pretty pink, whatever. It's still a blockage in the life force. The great saints and sages don't have samskars. Their system is totally clear. So fundamentals of hypnotism can reprogram the samskar. Sorry, you had a negative childhood experience. We can make that image better, but the block is still there. So fundamentals work. And I'm not saying like we shouldn't do fundamentals work. It's really very valuable stuff, like really valuable, but it just doesn't clear samskars. When we get into the stage 2 of our training, advanced hypnotism, there's eye movement therapy that really loosens up samskars really well. If you know what you're doing with that, you can not just shift them to positive, you can actually start to help them to release very quickly. But you really have to know what you're doing with that. So our graduates, I have an 8-hour CEU course on that. Our interpersonal hypnotherapist training is another 22 hours. That's a great way to understand. So like those 30 hours of content, plus our whole school's training, can help you to understand. Eye movement therapy can help to actually clear samskars. Parts therapy definitely can pave the way towards clearing samskars. What else is in advanced? Those are some of the main modalities. The focusing technique we do in advanced hypnotism, or at least as I bring it into our school. The focusing technique is where you find the negative felt sense in your body. It's like, oh, I got, knots in my stomach. That's a big samskar right there. Not samskars in your third chakra. You can feel that. That's what the focusing technique is about. And then you can explore it and help you or your client to work through it. But really, what happens when you get to regressive hypnosis, regressing the childhood, that actually is a way, as far as what we can do. It's the Shakti, the energy inside, the Prakriti, whatever word you want to use for it. That's the ultimate healer. Right when Christ was leaving, they said, Master, what are we going to do without you? He said, send upon you the great comforter, the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit in Hebrew is Ruach HaKodesh. That means like the holy breath of God, breath. I will send unto you the Holy Spirit. So when that energy can move through your system, it clears the block better than anything else. So breathwork honestly is one of the most powerful ways we can clear the samskaras. But a hypnotic regression will take us into the samskar, which is a memory. It'll bring up all that negative emotion. We will very successfully release that emotion. But it's not just the venting of the emotion in a safe space. There's a 50-step protocol we go through. I would say if you do that, pretty much the samskar is gone. And whatever's left, you could say the energy, the spirit inside will take care of the rest. So hypnotic regressions are a primary way to clear samskars, better than anything thus far in our training. Then once you get to clinical training, where we do with medical hypnotherapy and metaphysics of healing, at that stage, we start to go into breath work and talk about how to clear the blockages in the heart. Once the breath in that process brings up your client's stuff, then you jump in with your hypnotherapy techniques and help to heal that. My experience of breath work is kind of like hypnotic regression on steroids. It's a very intense way of systematically clearing what's in your system. Then in our transpersonal training, we do past life regression as a primary modality. It's not the only thing out of the 100 hours of that. By the way, those 5 sections I just mentioned are a total of 500 hours of training, giving you credentials of being a certified hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, transpersonal hypnotherapist. Anyway, past life regression will go into the samskars of the past life. That's assuming these memories are actually real. So we'll just talk as if they are. There is the idea that they're metaphorical journeys, and I'm very okay with that. Because either way, it's the same thing. Whether it's a metaphorical journey or a memory, it just came up from the subconscious. It's a negative story. You can use our protocol to change and heal that story in a way that's appropriate and effective. But deeper than that, let me just say, it can very well be used for clearing samskars. I had a student recently ask me about life between life regressions. And a lot of that work, which has become more popular, in my personal opinion, does not clear samskars. It's great. The stuff is cool. Way, way cool. If you know about how to clear samskars, and that's so much a big part of your aim of being a practitioner in hypnotherapy, is you understand the yogic model, and then you're willing to bring it into hypnotherapy. Any technique you use is going to move towards that. But anyway, there are techniques in hypnotherapy, especially in our school with all the eclectic stuff I bring to the table, that do clear samskars. Let's take a moment to talk about, before we run out of time, witness consciousness. It had nothing to do with hypnotherapy per se, although you can certainly teach your clients to go there. What happens it's really when you meditate. If you don't meditate, you'll never really get this. And you have to learn how to meditate on it. So before I go into it tonight, let me just give you some references, resources. My book, Peace Under All Circumstances, the audiobook, I don't know if the audiobook online, it should. The audiobook that's now free online, the appendices, should have sections on opening the heart and meditating on witness consciousness. There are audio files from that, meditations that go with that book. I haven't got them on YouTube yet, but you can purchase them off of our website, instituteofhypnotherapy.com. There are meditations in that help you establish this seat. Also on our website, my Opening the Heart teachings, which is very much what this talk is. This is just a little bit more elaborate than that. So in that download, it's a MP3 download set. It has teachings of how to open your heart and how to establish the seat of the observer. When you meditate and learn to be the observer of the human, you'll notice you have a body. Duh. You notice the body has sensations, right? You're there, The body in that whole system, it has emotions that come up. Those are very much your samskars. Your memories and beliefs are in there. It's all memories, beliefs, emotions, or samskaras. And then you got this conscious mind thing, your intellect, your sense of ego, your memories. There's different ways of categorizing it depending what model you use, but all that stuff is in there. There's a you who's not any of that stuff in the yogic model. Yet the yogic model is just like so in your face obvious. Like you're there, you're conscious, you're aware, you're watching, but you're not necessarily trained to do that. You don't necessarily meditate that on a regular basis. Somebody who does has such an advantage when emotion comes up. So what happens to me, emotion comes up, and it's not what happens to me. There's a stage, let me say, there's a stage when you're doing this. Eventually it's totally different. But let me say, while you're liberating yourself, what happens is a button gets pushed, your emotion comes up, you instantly, but hopefully you're already there, you instantly pull back and watch. It's like, oh, okay, he's upset. Matthew's upset. The human is upset. But I'm the spiritual being watching the human. You start watching, like my hands are moving now. I'm watching my hands move. I don't have to do anything about it. They just move as I talk. My head is nodding as I talk. I don't have to do anything about it, right? Voice is happening. I'm watching a lecture happen. I'm not giving a lecture. I'm watching a lecture happen. There's a consciousness observing a human vehicle delivering words. When you're just watching what's happening, and you really practice that during the easy times, do that when you're not freaking out about things. Meditate 5 minutes minimum morning and evening, eventually build up on it. And you, ideally half-hour morning and evening. Well, and if you do it, meditate learning about witness consciousness, you'll develop what's called the seat of the soul. You watch and life happens. Things will happen on the planet, viruses and whatnot. It will stimulate emotions in you. And then what do you do with your emotions? Don't suppress and push them down. Don't express and let them out. Pull back, watch, relax, breathe, and feel. That's the teaching. Observe, relax, breathe, and feel. How long does it take for a samskara to clear? Because while it's being stimulated, it really feels horrible. And your whole inner being, your human, is trying to figure out how to make it feel better. But you're not letting your human act. You're not letting it act out. You're not letting it have a behavior from that emotion. It's so hard because every human being is wired like this. Your button gets pushed. You have an emotion. It motivates behavior. What this teaching says is when you have an emotion, do not let it motivate behavior. The only behavior it really should motivate is ideally sit down and be still, go take a time out, and then relax, breathe, and feel. But it doesn't go away during your work day. It's not like, oh, if I just go sit under a tree for 5 minutes, I won't have this in my body anymore. It might take days or hours for the samskara to clear itself in that model. And so there's always ways to speed this up. If you do that stuff on your own, which honestly I believe you have to, once you catch on that you can't suppress your emotions nor can you act out on them if you want to clear your samskaras, then it just becomes a full-time job. You're always the observer. You're never suppressing. You're never letting your inner child run your life or your negative emotions run your life. So that's just happening all the time. And it might take literally days for a samskara to burn away, the big ones. And it might not actually burn away just by watching. The other way, which is why we're here, hypnotherapy, the way we teach it in interpersonal hypnotherapy, burns away, clears the samskaras. So, you got something that came up, like, oh God, this is horrible. Go get a hypnotherapy session with someone who knows these teachings, a graduate of our school who practices true interpersonal hypnotherapy, like really follows these teachings. They might have stuff that's better, I don't know. But I know if they do the methods that I really teach in the school, then they're going to help you to clear that samskara within 2 hours. When it's cleared, you move into what's called the core state. Our graduates know how to move you into that. And when you're there, you would say, we'll say, how do you feel now? And those would be words. Wow, it's like, wow, all that anger's gone. How do you feel? Peace, love, joy, bliss, oneness, God, pure light. And again, when it's healed, it doesn't have to be repeated. When you truly have cleared a blockage, it's gone. So the yogic teachings do show us many different ways, but really it's all kind of the same thing. When I say many different ways, the more you learn about other yogic practices, there's bhakti yoga, the practice of devotional love of God. When you practice bhakti, you fill your heart with so much love of God, all that extra energy, which is so blissful in and of itself, burns away samskaras quicker. The path of karma yoga, which is basically action or just doing your duty, going to work, doing what you're doing, being of service to others. But you do it with all your heart. You put your whole being into it without preference. Like, no, I'm just showing up. I'm just showing up. that actually does burn away samskaras. But again, all these teachings require hours and years of study. So there's different paths. Raj Yoga, or also known as, you might say, Dhyan Yoga, the path of meditation. Somebody who sits in meditation a lot. When you just sit still a lot, the Shakti, the energy, has nowhere to go but up and through you. Right? And then, again, I would throw in hypnotherapy with breath work. Amazing for clearing the blockages. There's other forms of yogic practice, but I just want to give you a few things. It's not just the hatha yoga, the body stretching. The hatha yoga body stretching and the breathing, what happens with that is you are breathing, so you're stretching. So the stretches, you might say the samskaras are kind of, not totally, but kind of stored in the muscles. So a good massage, you guys who are massage therapists know this. If you're massaging someone and you find that knot in their muscle and you push on it, they start crying. Not because it hurt physically, but because you just released a samskar. But again, I don't feel, so massage can help. I've had clients who I can't get them to break through. I'm like, God, come on, feel your emotions, open up. I'm like, you know what, go get 10 massages and come back to me. Go get 10 acupuncture treatments because they'll move your energy. Come back to me and then I'll help you to heal the deeper stuff. So we can do that with hypnotherapy, but yeah, sometimes the other modalities are really great to loosen people up. So hatha yoga, the body stretching and the breathing, definitely can loosen you up. And any of this stuff is going to help you to grow faster. The question is, like, how fast do you want to be free? And closing thoughts, then we'll go to Q&A or discussion with you guys. In the Zen tradition, the student says to the master, Master, I just need enlightenment. I want to be done. I want all my blockages cleared. I want to be totally free. He said, okay, well, it'll take 10 years. 10 years? I don't have 10 years. Okay, well, it'll take you 20 years. 20 years? No way, I don't have 20 years. It'll take you 30 years. So if you realize to clear all your blockages with intense spiritual practice, and I would add hypnotherapy to it, actually, here's what I could say about that. It's usually like 10 years. If you do just spiritual practice, the average person can get free of all their samskaras in about 10 years. It's pretty well documented. I'm not just making stuff up. But if you add hypnotherapy to it, which is, again, why I do what I do with the school and, my books and teachings, I've seen clients who work with me personally for 2 or 3 years, coming sometimes twice a week at first, eventually tapering down to once a week. I've seen people within 2 or 3 years, we can't find a blockage anymore. They do breath work, they just light up with bliss. You go for regressions, there's nothing trapped in the subconscious anymore. They know these teachings, they've been doing this stuff during these years. So my experience is 2 or 3 years of intense hypnotherapy with really good spiritual practice. You will not have any more blockages. You'll have emotions, because humans have emotions, just like you have a heart and blood and kidneys and water. That's moving through the system. Emotions move through the human system. Nothing wrong with emotion. But again, because you've been suppressing all that stuff for lifetimes, there's a lot of stuff bottled up in there. Again, this way of thinking, you don't really hear not in elementary school, not in junior high, not in high school, not in college. They just don't teach us this. And even again, like the Western psychological models don't necessarily talk this way. If it's a model that comes from glorious wholeness in Sufism, the Sufis call this one aspect of God the Kibriya, the glory of God. I never heard that in Freudian analysis, right? The glory of God pouring through your heart. Sufi mystics are intoxicated on the wine of the mystic, the bliss and nectar of God. Make that the basis of a psychotherapy, then come back to me and talk about what we can do for this planet. So what I'll say, and then let's go to Q&A. During the time when COVID is really challenging a lot of us, but you must sit home, practice these kind of teachings. You watch the news, you felt crappy, then just sit and meditate and close your eyes, breathe, feel, observe your feelings. Just sit there, breathe, feel. You don't do anything. It's not like I'm going to visualize world peace. You can do that. That's all good. But when you want to clear a blockage, don't do anything. Just feel. It's like, oh, that was horrible. I just saw what's happening in the hospitals. Breathe and feel. Just breathe and feel. That's what it means. Just breathing and feeling. Oh, there's a great spiritual teacher. His name is Andrew Harvey. He's a beautiful being. He said, if you're not feeling sad, I forget what he said. It was like, you are out of your mind if you're not feeling sad. Anyway, there's lots of quotes. He's a beautiful teacher, but we don't have time. So anyway, you might check out Andrew Harvey. All right. What do you guys know? What do you want to share, talk about? Questions, comments, silly sayings, snide remarks? I had a teacher used to say that. Any questions, comments, silly sayings, snide remarks? Sarah said, hi, Sarah. It's so good to hear it again. Thank you, Matthew. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Good night. Sarah usually doesn't make it to the end, so that's great. All right. I'm fully open to you guys. I don't see anybody typing. Okay, awesome. I'm still here. I'll give you a moment, but let me just say next week, what is the topic? I wrote the blog today. I should know. Total amnesia of it. Anyway, check out our blogs, look at Facebook and Twitter and all that, and our newsletter that comes out. There is a class scheduled for next week. Well, total amnesia. So it'll come back to me sometime, but it's not there right now. So they would definitely do class next week. Thank you, everybody. And again, I'm still here for Q&A, but if you need to log off or whatever, no problem. All right. Donna Jonah, I'll get your name eventually, said, I have to practice this breathing and feeling without trying to do imagery. Yeah, I'll comment on that very briefly. When you do anything, it's like you touch it, you buy it, you break it, you own it, that kind of thing. The energy is coming up and you try to take this negative energy and put positive thoughts in it. I get it. A lot of hypnotherapy kind of people, we do affirmations, suggestions, visual images. Again, that can be healthy. You could try to make that samskar prettier. But if you make all your samskars really pretty, you're still very blocked. So yeah, practice not doing guided imagery. Now again, guided imagery is like fundamentals of hypnotism stuff. Once you get really into the deeper teachings, yeah, you just let go. Right on. What was the name of that book by the yogi? So Paramahansa Yogananda, I know it's a mouthful. Just type in autobiography of a yogi on Amazon and you'll find it. It'll change your life if you've never read it. It's absolutely beautiful. He's going to talk about stuff that you're like, what? Like, no way. And either he's lying and he's not, or the world and the experience, the way a human being can be is so much greater. I read that book, my early 20s. And again, I was reading it when I was in college trying to find my major. I'm like, who in college can teach me to experience what Yogananda did? We're talking about like Christ-like miracles and, like things that are just off the charts and not experienced in the United States much at all. It's like, how do I learn about this? So when I made tonight's topic, yogic psychology and philosophy, I really mean like there is a whole nother system of thought that any human being can tap into. You don't need to be a psychotherapist to learn how to set the heart and mind free. All right. I tend to try to love everything to death. Good. So try to love everything to life. Nice. Love all these teachings, and this truly answered some current issues. Thank you so much. Thank you. Beautiful. I'm not saying names here, but thank you. As a student, great additional teaching to increase what I am learning. Thank you. Learning to use it is incredible. Thank you. Awesome. I can relate to all of what you said. I have been doing a lot of the techniques for a while. I have been led my whole life with childlike faith through prayer. Is praying for your Creator's perfect will a part of the process? That's awesome. For those of you who are still here, I'll be happy to answer that question for everybody. Prayer in relationship to deep yogic practice. Oh, it's such a good one. It's well, given no more than 5 minutes, but I'm like, wow, that's a whole topic. You got to be so careful with that. All right, so he just did something, whoever pushed your button, that guy, and you're really angry. God, please, anything you ask is probably not helpful to clear a samskar. God, please make him go away. You just got rid of the button pusher. You need the button pusher to clear the button. God, please just make all this pain in my heart go away. Like now. But you're not allowing for the process of true transformation to occur. So if I would say the most sincere prayer in that sense is, I'm yours. Just do what you got to do in me. I surrender. I give up. But in surrendering, giving up, giving your heart to, I'll just use the G word. We're not in hypnotherapy school right now. If you're surrendering your heart to God, like the deepest prayer is pure surrender, you're actually saying, I'm yours. I give up. You do it. And then just relax, breathe, and feel. You don't have to ask for God's will to be active. God, could you please do your will? Which is kind of like saying, get off your lazy ant, and God's doing his will. Like the Holy Spirit, which is that part of the divine, the Shakti that's moving through all of us, is here. I was here all the time, but when Christ said, I will send unto you the great comforter, I believe that's what he was referring to. I won't be here physically, he was saying, but I will send unto you this one energy that's inside of you all the time, that's dedicated to healing you and setting you free all the time. So one prayer, which comes from A Course in Miracles, is so powerful and so deep. It says, and again, you can pray or use any words you guys want. or don't be into the stuff at all. But it says, Holy Spirit, choose for God for me. To me, that's like the only prayer. Whenever I start meditation every night, honestly, I'll do it tonight. After dinner, it's earlier, I'm in California. So after dinner, I will, digest. I'll lie down and do like an hour of gentle kind of yoga. I do more intense stuff during the day, but gentle yoga at night. And then, but the moment I lie down to start my yogic practice and then leads into meditation, I will say, Holy Spirit, choose for God for me. And then I just keep going through my practice. But the moment I say that, I'm inviting in higher self, higher wisdom, whatever you want to call it, that energy, the Shakti, and it just purifies everything. You don't have to get specific. It's smart enough, right, to know what to do. So yeah, in the yogic model, prayer could actually be destructive in the sense that, not destructive, but not beneficial, because you're asking for God to, like, God knows how to heal you. So I just say, like, I'm yours, I give up. Spirit within, choose for God, choose for the light for me. Then the light gets to come in. The light does not come in full force because it will never go against your free will. If you say, no, I don't want to go through this inner transformation process, God's like, okay, I'll just sit and wait. But the moment you say, tear me a new one, just burn me up, just clear my system, I want to be free, and that's what it does. So I think I could go on and on about that. I love that question. Thank you. All right. Anything else before I stop recording and wrap it up? I'm learning to surrender now, and it is such a deeper experience, and so much more clarity shows up. Yeah, the deepest prayer is just, sometimes on my prayer just be, thank you, I love you, how may I serve you? Right? That's it, just thank you, I love you, how may I serve you? And then I just open. And the best way to serve, be of service is be a healed healer, right? Physician, heal thyself. So if you dedicate hours, I'm not, like, this is serious now, like this is COVID, this is a global pandemic. If you're not dedicating hours a day to spiritual practice, you're not being as helpful as you could. And I know not everybody can do that. But yeah, if you can spend more time in meditation, yoga, prayer, whatever you guys do, yeah, we can be amazed at the light of the world. Oh, class next week is the Life Mastery course. How to use the skill sets in our school, the Getting Organized process, the Creating Manifesting formula, Manifesting Prosperity teachings. We used to create a rocking life, but this year, like nobody can do much of anything. But this teaching is still crazy relevant right now. So next week's class, Life Mastery course, especially, now, how do we create success in all aspects of our life, but thinking way outside the box now that we have a whole new paradigm in our reality. All right, so that's coming up next week. All right, I'm going to stop recording. I'm still here if you guys want to talk about anything. I thank you all. Thank you for being part of this with me. I wish everybody a wonderful night.